talk about new software for Mimo and Migo, and I'm quite curious about it because I'm a bit concerned that we have a bit of monoculture with mobile Linux because everyone talks about Android, and Android doesn't even mention Linux so much. It doesn't have many of the libraries. It isn't structured very much like an open system. It is open, but it is kind of like very googly. It's got its own very unique structure. It's really hard to port applications from it to Linux and vice versa. So I'm hoping Migo kind of gains more ground. There is also the story about Unity from Canonical being ported to Qt, and Qt is the toolkit being used to construct KDE, and that's pretty major news. People talk about that as an indication of the parent company of Ubuntu perhaps considering some sort of an adaptation of KDE or components of KDE, or perhaps just using the same advanced toolkits and trying to put behind them GTK, which people like Monobacon have been complaining for a while. It kind of like some features which are available from the analogous program from Nokia. So that's something just scrolling up a bit.
Well, I'm pleased you brought it up, because while you're having a look to see if there's anything else that catches your eye, I can throw in this quick tidbit of news. It's to do with Android, and it's a browser that I just want to quickly mention. Now, I'll make it very clear that I haven't given this much time to run through properly, but I don't know how many of the listeners are Android users, but certainly as one myself, the main browser that I was using was Opera. And whilst it wasn't perfect, it did its job. It was rendered pages reasonably quickly, and I had no real issues with it. A new one to try for any Android user, it's obviously free, it's available on the marketplace, is the Miren browser. Spelled M-I-R-E-N. I'll be linking to it in the show notes. It supports it's tab browsing, supports Flash, multi-touch pinch zoom. Obviously, these are features that we're very well used to as Android users. Normal bookmark management that you get with most other browsers, reasonably familiar. And you can export your bookmarks very, very simply with it. That's the basis of Miren browser. I can't really say much more about it. It's a web browser. That's really it. But it renders pages incredibly fast. Superficially, and this is not scientific or anything like that, comparing it to Opera on the Android phone is chalk and cheese. It's noticeably quicker.
Does it use hardware acceleration by any chance?
Pass. I've literally only had to work with it for a very short period of time, and I'm going off a very, very quick look at it on somebody else's phone and a couple of people that have mentioned it on the net. It'll be linked in the show notes, but from my initial observations of it, it's certainly faster than Opera and certainly seems to be fully featured and very stable. So I'm sure...
discussion about Firefox 4. I'm not sure if you've seen any of the... because I think it's supposed to be released next month. But the main story, that's not really a good story, I've been coming across is the hardware acceleration issues that they have, especially with X servers. So that's like Linux BSD or whatever uses that. And some people say, well, they have to look forward to things like Wayland, perhaps sometime in the future, because without hardware acceleration, it's really hard to enable WebGL. And WebGL has some demos now where they try to show you the use of 3D in the browser to run certain applications. Pretty amazing things that you can achieve even running entire games in the browser based on the fact that you can just tap the power of the GPU. The other thing about it, related to it, I suppose I should say, is that there is lots more details about what's happening with Unity, and that's the new desktop, should we call it? Well, they basically put it ahead of they still run the old GNU applications, but they kind of replace the vanilla behavior or the vanilla interface of GNU and try to use something unique to theirs, and it's kind of based on the existing code they have. They also port some of the code in Vala to of course, like I said before, they have some Qt in it, but mostly they move it to C. So translating code from Vala to C is extremely simple, and they have some C coders doing that. So it's going to be pretty fast, but it also uses 3D acceleration, which I found very curious and then very, not many of the desktop environments use 3D to the full. to the full capacity, especially not in mobile devices or things which are kind of built with things like tablets in mind. I think KDE is a good example of things that do accommodate and do actually make use of screen space and have a separate interface even for netbooks. I'm not sure if you've tried it, but I did, and it's really fantastic what they did. It just doesn't get much marketing, and nobody really knows it exists so much as people think of Android these days as the mobile thing or the thing to put on a tablet. But one thing that Canonical was smart enough to do is they have a nice fallback now. In case you do not have 3D acceleration on your computer, perhaps you're on a very old computers, they have something reasonably useful that's going to take over in case you have just 2D, and by 2D they mean basically no hardware acceleration. Even the use of the word 3D is kind of exaggerated in this case because there is no 3D, it's just pseudo 3D. So
it brings up a very good point, but I think I'll leave that to the end because it's just something I want to briefly discuss to just get your views on, see if they're in any way the same as mine or completely different. So we've looked at Android, we've looked at the browser. I hope everybody checks it out that has Android. It's like I say, it's in the marketplace. And Roy, have you got anything else on your list? Because I'm scanning down mine. Let's have a look. See.
About the conference in Australia, obviously they have floods and all kinds of issues and disasters around there. And in Brisbane, they usually have the annual Linux conference. And for the past week, they said they weren't sure if they were going to have a conference or not. And today, they would give the decision. And of course, now it's like nighttime in Australia, very late at night, or towards, actually, it's almost morning now. And they gave the answer several hours ago, like 8 hours ago, maybe more. They basically decided there will be a Linux conference in Australia this year. So that's really good news, because that's one major conference. And I think Linus Torvalds tends to go to some of these conferences sometimes. It's one of the very few he goes to, and usually keeps it very quiet because he doesn't want to attract any people who come there and just ask for a signature autograph and take pictures with him, things like that. So that's one thing I see in my list. You have all sorts of lots.
Sorry, Roy.
Yeah, and one thing I was posted in the Oh My God Ubuntu website is in LibreOffice they have the whole issue with Microsoft formats now, and I'm kind of concerned because it seems like the Novell staff within the project is having a bit more influence than I had expected. I mean, I looked at people involved in it. One person has created a mock-up of trying to implement the ribbon interface in LibreOffice. And that's been put up in Oh My God Ubuntu, which usually cares about things without thinking the consequences, things like patents or things like I've been having this discussion with them recently. I'm trying to at least explain to them the issues with Mono, and I spoke to the main person who runs the website, and he kind of agrees with me in a nice way. Perhaps they'll do an article explaining to fairly young and fairly new users of Ubuntu what the issues, what is Mono, and why is it so controversial. So he kind of agreed with me. Let's do an article about the issue and try to at least show, okay, we mentioned things that use Mono, but we should at least kind of tell people what they should be aware of if they use Mono. So anyway, that's the site that basically runs this thing with Ribbon, and you look at the comments, and I'm seeing people saying, "Oh, it looks wonderful! Oh, it's beautiful!" And I was like, "Oh God."
It beggars belief. I mean, I've always said I think especially in a word processor or even an Office suite, my requirements I think echo the vast majority of computer users. If I boot up a word processor, I require bold, underline, italics. a few automatic tabs that I can throw in there, and maybe a few fancy fonts. And that is probably about the limit of what I require from a word processor. And I don't think that's unique or strange or lacking, because I think that's probably what the vast majority of users that have got it in the home, say in my case AbiWord, need. And it always makes me laugh when these features, and from what I've seen, I could be wrong, because I don't know. I haven't been following Microsoft Office since obviously I left a Microsoft dependency some time ago. But from